Good evening. I'm Sean Lynn Jones, co-chair of the Brookline Neighbor Alliance, and Dan Saltzman is the other co-chair of the Brookline Neighbor Alliance, the BNA. And we're both very pleased to welcome you to what's become an annual tradition for the Brookline Neighbor Alliance in conjunction with the League of Women Voters of Brookline and the Town Meeting Members Association. We're very pleased to sponsor this year's Candidates Night. This evening, we have one candidate for the Board of Selectmen, and then several candidates running in contested races for the library trustees and for the school committee. To moderate this debate, the League of Women Voters has very graciously offered Margaret Bush to serve as moderator, and I'm sure she'll do that with the efficiency and impartiality for which the League's moderators are known. And at this point, I will turn over the meeting to her, but thank you again for coming.
Good evening. This evening's session is co-sponsored by the Brookline Neighborhood Alliance and the Brookline League of Women Voters. We will be holding this session again tomorrow afternoon at the Brookline Senior Center. So if you have people that you would like to invite to hear the candidates there, please pass along that invitation. That program will begin at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Before we begin to listen to the candidates who are here with us tonight, we'd like to ask if there are candidates in the room who are running for town meeting, if they would like to stand and just introduce yourself. You'll have to shout out. But if you would stand, I know there are at least a couple of you a bunch of you in the room. All right, I'm going to start in the front row and just work our way back. So let's start over here.
I'm George Abbott White, precinct number 9, Fox School.
Thank you. We need everybody to shout out because we're not having you at a microphone.
And I'm involved in a lot of things going on in town since I retired and it's much fun.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily Lockhart, precinct 3. I live about 200 feet from the Lawrence School. I'm a lawyer and moved into town about 6-7 years ago, and we love it here. I would be thrilled to be more part of the Brookline process, but as a lawyer, as a mother, as a social justice advocate, I'm really excited to be part of the process.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Paula Friedman, precinct 14, running for re-election. I've served in town meeting for 8 years. By profession, I am a dentist, geriatrician with a public health background. I am an administrator at Boston University Goldman School of Dental Medicine and lived in Brookline for almost 35 years.
Thank you.
Steve Raines, precinct 1.
Louder.
Louder.
Peter Rain, precinct 1. Former town meeting member, former president of town meeting members association, lifelong administrator of nonprofits, and what more can I say? The voters of Brookline have been here for the same house for 30 years.
Thank you.
Georgia Johnson. I'm running for re-election at precinct 14. I'm a management consultant specializing in nonprofits and lived here since 1999. 14 years. Anyway, I love Brookline and work with a lot of the nonprofits in this community, such as the Brookline Community Mental Health Center and the Coolidge Corner Theater, 21st Century Fund, all sorts of good organizations.
Thank you, and good luck to everybody on April 30th. The format this evening will be divided into three different units. We're going to hear first from the gentleman who is running for the Board of Selectmen, and he will make an opening statement, and following that, we will take questions from the floor. If you have questions, you will need to come up here to the microphone. BATV is filming this, and people in town will be hearing your questions and hearing the answers to them. The candidate will have a closing statement when we finish the questions. Then we will invite a second group of candidates to go forward. They are the people who are running for the Board of Library Trustees, and they will, one by one, make their opening statements. At that point, we will take, again, questions from the audience, and you will come up here to ask those. And following their questions, they will also have an opportunity for a closing statement. And then the last group this evening, of course, will be the school committee candidates who will follow the same format. It's important that we remember that we have to keep all of the comments brief. So when you're asking your questions, please don't make a speech about it. Ask your question and keep that to 1 minute. We have a timekeeper who will flash a signal to you when your time is running out. And we want to give the opportunity for the candidates to answer. It is the rule that each of the candidates will have to answer your question. So your question is not going to a single candidate, it is going to the candidates, and they will all answer your question. All right, so we're about to begin, and Neil, will you turn your sign around?
Oh.
Neil Wyszynski is the candidate who is running for the Board of Selectmen. So we'll start with him, and he will speak to us, and then we'll have questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neil Wyszynski. I've been a resident of Brookline since 1980, so it's going on 30 years. And I've been a member of the advisory committee, which is the town's finance committee, for 13 years. I've developed a very deep knowledge of the town budget. I have a very deep knowledge of the town. I have a family who's that my children have gone through the Brookline schools, and I'm married. My wife Susan, and I'm running on the tenets of my candidacy are fourfold. One is transparency and inclusion. I believe in the open meeting law, and I'll work the best I can to adhere to not only the spirit, but not only the letter, but the spirit of the open meeting law. The other tenet of my candidacy is sustainability. And that's, I think of it in two dimensions. The first is financial sustainability. We need to have a sound financial footing in order to deliver the services that we need to deliver. We can't just rely on overrides to fund our town government. We have to find other ways in addition to overrides. And if we're going to go to the community for an override, we need to make sure that we've done our homework, we have a clear, a concise plan that we put forward to the voters in a very structured, systematic way. The other aspect of sustainability is environmental sustainability. We need to turn the planet over to our children, I think, in a better condition that we leave it in. People who've dealt with me think of me as a balanced person, and that's another tenet of my candidacy. And the last tenet is integrity. My word is my bond, and I hope that I can continue that.
Do we have have questions from the audience, and please come forward. If there are additional questioners in the audience, will you also begin to line up here?
I'm John Bassett. Neil, could you explain the agreement between the town side and the schools on division, on the budget agreement, and perhaps if you have an opinion on whether that should be modified?
Generally, for those of you who don't know, there's a budgeting agreement between the town and the schools called the Town School Partnership, where generally any new revenues are split 50-50 between the town and the schools. In recent years, with the pressures on the schools, the Town School Partnership has been a bit more generous to the schools than that 50-50 split. It's been something like 54-55% to the schools and 40-45, whatever the breakdown is, to the town. The one thing about the Town School Partnership, one thing that it does is it provides budget certainty for the schools and for the town, which makes it easier to plan. And it's one of the foundations of our fiscal policies. And I would favor keeping the Town School Partnership. We can look at adjusting it as we have. There are more pressures right now on the school side that I hope we'll hear more about tonight than there have been on the town side. So I think it can be, the split can be examined, but the concept of having budget certainty, I think, is a good one.
Hi, I'm Judith Vanderkay, and my question to you, Neil, is as a selectman, would you consider working with the Transportation Board and their various committees to bring their processes of notifying and working with the community more in line with some of the other boards in town?
Yes, transparency and open government is something I believe very strongly in. So I'd want to make sure that the transportation, not only the Transportation Board, but other boards and commissions are being open. I think the Transportation Board, one of the things the Transportation Board has done, which I think is admirable, is they send out their agendas to the town meeting members group, and there's the town meeting members listserv. There's also a listserv that citizens can subscribe to, where they would get notifications of all of the boards, or as many of the boards and commissions that they want to get. Sometimes I've found if you sign up for these listserv, you then get bombarded with emails, and sometimes in the bombardment, the emails can get lost. But I'd be very interested in what some of your ideas are and how we can open it up and make it more transparent. So I'd love to have a conversation with you and anyone else who wants to have such a conversation on that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Neil. I'm Dan Saltzman. I'm just wondering that the first thing that you mentioned was openness and the open meeting law, and I'm just curious if you could elaborate on why that's the first thing that you start out with.
I think Brookline government. One of the things that makes Brookline government so successful is the willingness of so many really smart, involved people to participate in the government. And I think that's what makes Brookline's government different than, say, Boston or Newton, where you have a mayor. It's a volunteer government as opposed to a professional government, at least the political side of it. And the only way to make that work is to get a large group of involve people, and the only way to get that large group is to publicize, have meetings open, and really be open to comments from the public, and get more people to serve on boards and commissions. I come from the advisory committee, which is a committee of up to 30 people, and one of the struggles with a committee like that, it's so time-consuming, getting people to volunteer, and the only way I think people would be willing to volunteer is if they can feel like they make a difference, that they can jump into the process, and people feel that the process is open. So I think it's central to what makes Brookline government work.
Thank you.
Good evening. Arthur Conquest, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6. Arthur Conquest, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6. Is that okay? Okay. Neil, one of the hot issues that is facing the town at this moment is the question of affirmative action and diversity. And I want to see if I can get some thoughts from you about what you think the town can do to crack this barrier, this glass ceiling that we have with all of the Board of Selectmen being white, all of the school committee being white, and so on and so forth down the line. But more importantly, 26 department heads being white. And what can you think of that might be able to unclog that logjam?
Thank you for the question. One of the town meeting warrant articles, or two of the town meeting warrant articles, deal with that question. So I'm aware of the debate. An early part of my career was spent with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission as an investigator. So I'm very familiar with the issue. I think I don't favor the approach in Article 10. I think one danger, I think, in that approach is it potentially politicizes all personnel decisions. I think the process needs to be open. We need to advertise positions in publications, recruit at colleges and other places that and make positions, make openings known. And open the field up and make it a level playing field. But once the field is level, it's up to candidates will interview, and so I think the best way to do it is to make sure the playing field is level. And I don't think we can have quotas. And I think that for every position, the best candidate should be hired.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Neil. Emily Lockhart, Precinct 3, running for town meeting. I have a question about taxi medallions.
Yes.
This has become a big issue. Brookline is considering taxi medallions. Of course, Boston and the Boston Globe has a big expose out talking about the resulting sometimes extortion and criminal behavior and poor consequences, we'll say, of their medallion system. What are your thoughts on the Brookline taxi medallion system? And if you don't agree with it, do you have an idea for other ways to bring in revenue, understanding that we are trying to figure out good ways to increase the coffers here in Brookline? Thank you.
Right. The taxi medallions has been kind of, we're well down the road of going towards taxi medallions, and I was very shocked reading the Boston Globe expose, and I would hope that if we do taxi medallions, as it looks like we're going to, we would set up some kind of regulatory and enforcement structure such that what's going on in Boston isn't going to happen here. I think we should look at, is what's happening in Boston endemic to the taxi medallion structure, or is it just something peculiar to a few taxi companies? And I don't know the answer to that. Taxi medallions are, the system is in place in many cities, New York being the largest, of course. And I'm not aware of any allegations of that kind of behavior there. So I would hope it's not just endemic to the system, but I think we definitely need to look at that and make sure that what's going on in Boston doesn't happen here.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Michael Burstein, town meeting member and library trustee. Michael Burstein, town meeting member and library trustee. Neil, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on the structure of our town government. You've been very involved with it. You're on the advisory committee. You were before talking about how well our town government works, how it differs from Boston's or Newton's. Do you have it? I mean, you may not have any particular thoughts, but do you have any thoughts on whether there's anything you would change or improve, or do you feel that what we have with our selectmen and our town meeting is functional?
I believe it's functional as long as we have a broad group of citizens who are willing to volunteer and put in the time. If we lose that, then I think it's not functional. One of the downsides of the town meeting form of government, it's tough to get decisions done, and it can take longer. And we live with that. We can do things like call a special town meeting if something something comes up that in between the two town meetings, and we've done that in the past. But that's probably in my view the biggest downside. Another downside is there's no one person in charge. We don't have a mayor. So if something isn't going well, you can't blame that one person and throw the guy or the gal out. You can throw out the individual selectmen as they come up every year, but that's a little different. So the accountability structure is a little different than in the city. But I think overall, Brookline, because we have this broad group of people who are involved in town government, I think it works.
And now for closing comments from Neil Wyshynski.
Well, I believe in our town government. We have some real challenges ahead. The biggest challenge is going to be facing us with how we're going to deal with the burgeoning school enrollment, and there's the potential for an override. So there's a lot of challenges ahead, and I hope everyone will come out and vote on April 30th.
Thank you. And good luck. As Neil is leaving, we'll ask the library trustee candidates to take their places at the table. For those of you who are watching on BATV, you might like to know that there are 5 candidates, and they are running for 4 slots as library trustees. So this is a competitive race. They will be speaking from left to right in the order in which they are seated, and they will also have opening statements, each telling us about their background and their running for the office. At the point when all of them have spoken, we will take questions from the floor following the same format. So, Magdalene, begin.
I'm Magdalene Moran. I moved to Brookline about 15 years ago while pursuing my PhD at Harvard Medical School. I currently live in the Coolidge Corner area with my husband and 5-year-old son, and with his birth we became very avid library users, and I saw this as an opportunity to potentially give back something to Brookline and to the library system here. I've been volunteering for the past almost year on the trustee programming committee, and there I've helped develop and execute the first programming aimed at reaching out to the 20s and 30s, a group that's often underrepresented at the library. In the course of that programming, I helped bring in new people and new sponsors. The library is defined by Wikipedia as an organized collection of resources made accessible to a local community. And while that definition isn't really changing, the resources that are available are changing. There's an advent of digital resources, as we all know, and I think it's critical that we embrace these new technologies while continuing to promote access, making sure we don't increase socioeconomic disparity, and continuing to have the library as a key community center. I think creative use of our resources is going to be critical in the coming years. Both partnerships with other nonprofits within the area as well as with merchants is going to be important. And I think the 10 years of experience that I have in biotech as a VP, working to make new medicines, leading collaborations across different companies, managing teams of large groups of people towards a common goal, and experience bringing in money in the for-profit sector will prepare me well to help out with these questions and issues.
I'm Judith Vanderkay. I'm running for re-election as a library trustee, and I am very happy to be able to say that since the last one of these functions I attended, we have succeeded in opening the library on summer Sundays, which came about with the assistance of the rest of the board, of course. And I think that is a wonderful service to the town, and I know people have enjoyed it and will look forward to it this summer. I'm a 30-year resident of Brookline. I'm also a town meeting member in Precinct 19. So I think I know something about the town and what the issues are and what the community is interested in. And of course I keep my ear out to find out more. And I also have experience in the business and nonprofit worlds. And although we may not like to think about this, in not very many years, we're going to be looking for a new library director. And I think my experience hiring executives in the nonprofit sector as well as business will be useful to the trustees in that challenge. On the trustees board, I serve as chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee, and we are currently looking at ways to enhance the physical plant, renovating some of the furniture and the furnishings, and we'll continue with that and make sure that our libraries are going to be physically capable of delivering the services that our residents and patrons so much depend on.
Hi everybody, my name is Pooja Mehta. I'm running again for library trustee. I ran last year, came very close, and I appreciated everybody's support. I work in the State House. I went to law school. Right before I started law school, I discovered that I was dyslexic, and luckily for the library, it saved my career, basically. That's why I was able to finish law school and do quite well. The technology available at the library was incredible. I was able to get computer software that would light up the Word, and also I would get it in an audio version, and it was incredible. I didn't have it before. And I think that type of accessibility is very important in our library. Right now we do have a lot of software that's very helpful. We have software that takes text to speech, but we don't have software that takes speech to text. For instance, like Dragon software, where you speak into it and people can, where people can have things typed out. That is very important for people like myself, and also people who are the elderly and they can't see the keys as much, or wherever it may be. This type of innovation, I think, is important for our library. Also, I've worked on the library gala 2 years ago, and I'm sad to see it go. I'd love to have it come back. My job in the State House is to help local municipalities get money to their communities, and I would love to think of creative ways here to do that as well. I was also a avid supporter of the Sunday summer hours, and I voted for it in town meeting, and I really hope we can have that be a part of our lifestyle here in Brookline. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm Jennifer Reese. I just would like to thank the Brookline Neighborhood Alliance and the League of Women Voters for inviting me tonight and putting on this event. I am a trustee and I'm running for re-election. I've been a Brookline resident for 11 years. I live in Precinct 2, right by the Rose Garden, and I frequent Coolidge Corner. I consider Coolidge Corner Library to be my second home, so I care very much about it. In the past few years, I have a daughter who is about to go to kindergarten this fall, and I was fortunate enough to stay at home and take care of her and work part-time as the events coordinator at St. Paul's Episcopal Church. And recently, I returned to my career. I am an interior designer, and I work for an architectural firm in Boston. My client is, you probably have heard of them, Google, and they're building a big campus over in Kendall Square, and that is my project right now. Also, I'm the social coordinator for my daughter's preschool Clinton Path Co-op. So all those things keep me pretty busy. My husband's right here in the audience, Lauren. On the board, in addition to being a board member, I'm also the chair of the exhibits committee. I'm a member of the program that Judith is chair of, the Building and Grounds Committee. Oops. Okay.
Hi, I'm Michael A. Burstein, and I'm running for re-election for library trustee. I'm running for a fourth term, and so I actually have the most experience of any candidate who's running this particular year. In my time on the library board, we've seen a lot of changes. In particular, I think circulation has jumped about 38%. So that's something that I may want to talk about a little bit later. I first came to Brookline for graduate school, and I've lived here since 1995 with my wife. We're homeowners in Precinct 12, and we have twin 3-year-old daughters. They're going to be 4 in July. So if I fall asleep during this, you'll understand why. I feel that I have a demonstrated record of accomplishment as a library trustee. The Sunday summer hours have been mentioned. When I first ran back in 2004, I actually ran on that issue. For a while there, I was one of only 2 trustees, then 3, then we started convincing the rest of the board, and I never let up on this. Every one of my votes on the Sunday summer hours was always to push for this and to have it happen, and I was delighted when 78% of town meeting voted in favor of that. I oversaw the implementation of our new circulation system, which has made it a lot faster for people to check out books in the library, allows us to work with a smaller staff than we've had 20 years ago. I used to be chair of the Buildings and Grounds Committee that Judith now chairs, and during that time I oversaw the renovations of the Putterham and Coolidge libraries. I'm very proud of the solar panels that we put on Putterham. And I do want to say that this is actually, at the moment, I think a critical time for the library. As has been alluded to before, we are probably going to find ourselves, whoever gets elected this year, on the board that is going to need to select a new library director. And that's going to require, I think, the experience and knowledge of how the library works. I've been endorsed by a majority of the current board, so I think that speaks to my ability to work well with others. And if anybody wants to find out more information about me, I have a website, bursteinforbrookline.com.
Thank you to our candidates. Are there questions from people in the audience? We have some. If you have questions, please come forward to the microphone.
Thank you. I'm Kaya Vanderzeel, town meeting member, Precinct 15. I live in South Brookline, near the Putterham Library. We're kind of like the suburbs of Brookline. We don't always feel like we're included. I'm wondering if there's any possibility of extending hours at the Putterham Library. We have truncated hours, it seems to me. The other issue about that is that one of the town meeting members from Precinct 16, Regina Frawley, has started a senior social there, but currently she can't keep that going because there's no more time, no more availability of the room where that's usually held. This is important because we do have a large number of retired people, some of whom are wheelchair bound, require a spouse to be able to get around. And it was a very nice way for them to get together and just socialize with each other. I mean, she would have people like Coppinger over, there'd be a lunch a couple times a year. That's kind of gone by the wayside. And for people with limited mobility, it is difficult to get to places like the senior center where there's no parking and other problems with getting to the libraries. But I'm wondering if there's any chance that one might consider expanding hours at the Putterham Library.
Which order are we going in? Or are we starting with me again, or?
Go ahead and answer in order. A reminder that all of the speakers have to respond some way to the question. Thank you.
Great. And so I think it's an interesting question that you pose. I think one of the things that we're going to be faced with over the coming years is the question of resources and what we can do. I think we're going to have to look into it and discuss it. And I'm not familiar, I'm sure, as Michael and some of the other trustees are, with the available budget, but it's certainly something to consider and something that, as you see from the reaction of the people up here, the Summer Sundays has been very successful in expanding the library hours. I think has been very beneficial to all. So I think, this could be an interesting time to discuss it. Whether the resources are really available, I think we need to find out more about. I think the same answer goes to, are there more creative ways to use the space? Are there any sort of outdoor areas where some of the groups can meet? To try to make room for all and make sure that everybody who's interested in using the library, from the kids programming to the senior programming, has the opportunity to do so.
We can certainly look into, as Magdalena said, how we might best use the resources that we have to serve the widest number of people. And so we can certainly look into serving the needs of the Putterham community as well as we can. With respect to Regina Frawley's activity, I believe the situation was that another group had reserved the time on many of the days that Regina had wanted to set appointments for her group, and they just couldn't both have the space at the same time, because as you know, the meeting space at Putterham is limited. But it's an interesting idea to think of using the outside in nice weather. Perhaps there could be contingent arrangements so that one of the programs could meet out there and the other one could use the accessible room. And possibly if we were to work a little harder, perhaps we could find some way to accommodate both groups with schedules that would be convenient for them.
Thanks for the question, Kea. I am very much in support of having a library to have expanded hours also in the summer. Like we talked about earlier, initially was kind of a delicate subject of expanding the hours. Town meeting voted in 78%. It was $15,000 in the summer. A lot of people said that's too much money. How are we going to get it? The advisory committee had clearly said we have the money, we can spend it. I feel like our community, Brookline, is very unique in that we very much hold education at a very high level. And I see this program of whether it be with the seniors or whether it be with the kids, a question of accessibility. Why should we not, if we have the money for it, why not have our library be more accessible? Thank you. I very much understand that it's kind of becomes a second place for seniors to go. If I tell my mom, go to the senior center, she'll give me a funny look, but if I tell her to go to the library, she'd love to go there. So it kind of becomes a space that people want to, check out another area and kind of have a community. So I'm very much in support of that. Thank you, Kay.
Hi, Kaya. It's a very interesting question. It's, there's the issue of space needs, hours of operation, and accessibility. I'm going to shift a little bit from the specific question about the meeting area. But as we all know, our population of children is really soaring and will continue to do so indefinitely. So we have a real crunch on K through 8 right now. We're going to be doing some major shifting around with our schools, kindergarten particularly. And all of that will impact the library, very much so. And so it's a very good question that I think the board needs to be open to as we get busier and busier.
Kaya, first of all, I want to say that assuming I do get reelected, I want you to bring that question back to me outside of this forum. I'm going to give you the answer. I like the idea of expanding the hours at Putterham. I pushed for expanding the hours at Coolidge. I once actually joked with our library director, Chuck Flaherty, about having a 24-hour library in town. But I'm going to give you the answer you don't want to hear, but then I'm going to explain to you why and what you can do. Because your question was, it sounded to me like your question was, can we expand the hours at Putterham? And I think the answer is going to be no, for a very simple reason. What we're dealing with here is a board. Now, we're an elected board, and we need to be responsive to the voters. But right now, you're dealing with basically five people, only 4 of whom will be elected to the board, which only constitutes a third of the board. Part of the difficulty that I had trying to push for summer Sunday hours over the past 9 years was getting the public who always, every time I met a member of the public, introduced myself as a library trustee, this was the first question that they would ask me about, was summer Sunday hours. But when I said to them, please do me a favor, write a letter, send it to the Board of Trustees and the Board of Selectmen, let the town know, people would fall down on the job. And I would say to you, this is the first time I've even heard that there's interest in having Putterham open with extended hours. So I think that if you want to see it happen, I'm more than happy to be an advocate for it, but I think we're going to need to get the community to show more interest in it to the current Board of Trustees and also to the Selectmen. I think the advisory committee will buy into it a lot more quickly than the Selectmen will. I mean, like I said, this year, our budget for the entire town at town meeting that we voted was over $200 million. We had an hour and a half debate over the piddling $10,000 it cost to open Coolidge and summer Sundays. It was a very popular vote in the end, as I said, but I think this is something that we're going to need to get the entire community to really step forward and say, we really want this in the town.
Hi, good evening. Emily Lockhart, Precinct 3, running for town meeting, and thank you all for being here. My question is somewhat similar, and actually Jen, excuse me, Jen kind of presaged it a little bit. With the number of families that are growing, number of small children, preschool, before school, 1s and 2s and 3-year-olds, the library is a great resource. Lots of moms and their kids or caregivers and their kids go out to the library, but it doesn't open till 10. So most kids do not get up at 10, they get up at 6. Have you thought about, and if you could keep it brief, just if you have a plan, if you've thought about it, yes or no, for getting those hours, getting those doors open a little bit earlier? Thank you.
I mean, I think the answer to this question probably goes back to what Michael just said. I think all of these things are on the table for discussion, but I think as he's pointed out, there has to be, as Neil talked about, there are going to be a lot of budget issues coming up. So everything that we want to do, unless it's some sort of creative solution, but anything that extends hours is going to cost additional money. And so the question is really going to be, how much does the public value this compared to the other priorities? And to emphasize what Michael said, coming to the trustees and your town meeting members would make that a lot more possible.
I'm going to have to steal Michael's thunder and say this is a very interesting idea, and it's the first I've heard of it, that anyone is interested in having the library open earlier. I have heard people say that they wish some branches were open later in the evenings, but earlier is a new idea. And again, not to steal too much of your thunder, Michael, but I would say that the avenue to take to see if we can get anywhere with this is to get community groundswell in favor of it. Oh, and I did want to say, I have noticed over the years, I was a friend before becoming a trustee, and it seems to me that the children's programming has increased considerably, that there's a lot more for kids to do than there was, say, 10 years ago.
Thanks for the question, Emily. I couldn't agree with you more. I have a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, so I might fall asleep here as well. And it's the same thing happened when the ISIS closed and I was on maternity leave. I had nowhere to go but my house, and it's not a good time when it's you and 2 babies screaming. You want to get out. The library was a great respite, but yes, my children wake up at 4 and 5 and 6, and I couldn't get out of the house till about 9:30, and that made it very hard. I think, again, there are creative solutions that were discussed earlier. Other libraries, what they'll do is they'll have a volunteer position open up the library to extend hours rather than have the full staff come in. That's a possibility. There's also, I work in the State House, and I do a lot of grant work for libraries and bridges and all that good stuff. And there are ways to build more, get creative ways to get more money. I think we just need to think about it, and this is something that's really important to public health. There's a lot of new moms that are sitting at home wishing that they could go somewhere, and like I said, with the ISIS closing, we need that. So thank you so much for your question.
Well, I might sound like a broken record here, but I agree, concur, and echo my colleague's response to that question, Emily. But I did support Summer Sundays tirelessly and consistently, and it is, near and dear to my heart because I am around in the summertime, and it gets hot, and we have a lot of elderly citizens in Precinct 2. We have a senior citizen housing right across the street from Coolidge Corner, and it was pretty much a full house every Sunday that we were open last summer. So as Michael said, let us know. The best way, like Michael said, when I was campaigning, everyone brought that up about expanding hours. And I said, that's a wonderful idea. I would support that. Put it in writing and send us a letter. One thing I want to mention is we are going to get a new website very soon. And the trustees are going to have their own page. And we're going to be very accessible. And you can send us emails. There will be more of an open dialogue and more ways to communicate in the very near future. So I encourage you to please let us know what's on your mind. Thank you.
First thing I was just going to say to my fellow candidates, don't worry about stealing my thunder. I have other thunder I'm bringing out. And Emily, again, this is something that has not been brought up before. I mean, like I said, I'm a father of twin 3-year-old girls, and we've been using the library a lot. I've even posted some pictures of them at the library on my campaign Facebook page. I will tell you that there is one other issue you need to consider. I'm not saying that I'm against this idea. Actually, I love the idea. But one of the things that we had to deal with when we were expanding hours summer Sundays was that, as you noted, it's a question of library staffing. It's not just budget. We had a situation when we were trying to do summer Sunday hours, when Chuck, our library director, looked at the contract with the director of, I think, Human Resources, Sandy LeBeau of the town, and we had, as the library, Chuck had the right to start assigning people to summer Sundays under the contract we had with the union. There was absolutely no issue that we could not do that. But then yet you have a question. Do you really want to do something that's going to suddenly disrupt your staff? You want your library staff to be friendly, accessible. You want them to be happy that they're there. And we ended up having some discussions back and forth in order to try to, we basically asked them what would make it more palatable for you to do this. And I think it speaks to the fact that we wanted to meet them halfway, even though we didn't have to, that a lot of people have volunteered for those extra hours and for the extra pay that goes with it. So I think this is a good idea for us to bring back to the trustees. But again, I think there are some issues that we're going to have to think about before we even start considering implementing it.
Hi, Dick Benka, a member of the Board of Selectmen, and not a question, so you can relax. There was a comment made that the South Brookline senior social hours at the Putterham Library had been curtailed. Tune in to next Tuesday's Board of Selectmen meeting. The South Brookline Senior Social is going to start again, and the schedule will be announced next Tuesday.
Thank you for the added information to the panel. We will now ask the panel panel of candidates to each give their closing comments, starting with Magdalene.
I think
Sean, do you have a question? Sean has a question.
Wait, I'm being corrected here. I should have asked for more questions. We have one more question for the panel before they give their closing comments. I will not come in again once the question has been answered, unless somebody else appears to ask a question. We will just proceed with the final comments, beginning with Magdalene. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean Lynn Jones, a town meeting member from Precinct 1 and also a member of the advisory committee. I happen to work in publishing, so I wonder about the future of books, magazines, and printed matter in general in a digital age. And so I'd really be interested in what you have to think about this as current or potentially future members of the Board of the Library Trustees. Just to put my question very specifically, what do you think will be the single most important change that the library will have to make in the next 3 to 5 years as it continues to adjust to the digital revolution and maybe even changes we can't fully foresee?
I think that's a really interesting question, and this move to digital media is something that's really interested me theoretically as what continues to be the role of libraries. So to get to your specific question, I think one of the main factors contributing to the answer is going to be what the big 6 publishers do. So there's no unified view on how material is now licensed to libraries. And in fact, I think 4 of the big 6 publishers don't currently have any agreements with libraries. Sorting that out is going to be a huge question, and how we're able to do that and advocate for libraries, I think, is going to be important. The other thing that strikes me is how to embrace digital media, which I think really is the way of the future, without promoting economic disparity. So how do you make it so that you move to e-books and you don't just allow the people who have the money to buy e-readers access to that content? Because one of the things that the library really needs to do is to serve all of the community, particularly those members who can't afford it. So I think we're going to have to think about some creative ways to do that, to promote digital media without isolating segments of the population. And one of the ideas that I had was, thinking about, is there a way that the library could, raise some small amount of money to provide some e-readers to the senior center? There's a lot of free digital content now, classics, things that are no longer copyright protected. Could we load up some of those e-readers, provide them to the senior center, and help get more accessibility while embracing the digital age?
Well, now you stole some of my thunders, because I was going to say to Sean that I think the solution to his challenge will be made in conjunction with the publishing industry, because of the reasons you said. We're staying on top of the developments. As you know, we already do have a pretty good size and growing e-book collection. We also can tap the resources of the Minuteman network, the other libraries in the network, and we've seen a huge growth in the utilization of those services. So I think, I agree, it's the wave of the future. And I would like to see if we can figure out the finances and security and so on. I would really like to see lending of ebook devices and in addition to lending the content. We already have this program for MP3 players. You can go and get a book, an audio book, get the little device that it's loaded on and take it home, and when your time is up, you bring it back for the next person. I think that's a feasible model for e-readers as well, although the cost outlay would be considerably larger, and but still, I hope we can make that happen.
Thanks, Sean, for your question. I agree with you that that is one of, and that's actually one of my tenets as well, is relevancy, is are we becoming, as a library, no longer relevant because people aren't going to paper books, they're actually just going on their Kindle, going to Amazon, pressing click, and for $1.99 they have 350 pages to read. So I've talked to some people when I explain my tenants, and they say, well, I haven't gone to the library because I just have a Kindle now. And that's what we need to work on, is because you have a Kindle, don't spend that $1.50 there, go to our library and get the books there. I do agree with the idea of possibly doing some sort of fundraiser or something external that's not baked in the budget. We have a $3.6 million budget in the library. It's 1.5% of the overall town budget, but that's still sizable. We need to think about a creative way to get these devices in, because I have one, but not everybody has one, and we don't want to extend the differences. But I think this is also, it's going to take time to move in that way, and I think finding a leader to succeed Chuck, who's been an excellent leader, is also going to be a big charge for this group here. We need to make sure that the new leader keeps this in mind. Thank you.
It's hard going next to last. Those were all great comments from about the digital age. I think that everything they said is true, and I agree 100%. We're going to be getting a new director. That will be one of the main issues that we're going to be thinking about while we're interviewing. Budgetary concerns, absolutely. It is not an inexpensive initiative to take on, to have gadgets that people can borrow, but it's something we have talked about several times as a board, how we're going to deal with this, and we haven't resolved it yet, but we're going to keep talking about it and addressing it. But I will say, though, that books are not going away anytime soon. If you look at our numbers for the Brookline 3 libraries that we have, our numbers have tripled in the past 20 years, our circulation numbers. And if you look at just the past 5 years, about the time when e-books and electronic media soared and took off, it's still increased. And my guess is it will keep doing that. I don't think that books are going away in my lifetime, my daughter's lifetime, and my hopefully future grandchildren's lifetime. So, if you think about it, where are you going to browse? I'm a browser, and a lot of people are. Bookstores are having lots of trouble right now, and less of their square footage is devoted to books. They are supplementing their sales with other things like gifts and stationery and jewelry. Look at Brookline Booksmith. It's the book industry is contracting when it comes to retail, and so our library is really, really crucial to maintaining some of the unique things that we have. You can go in and look at, have a collection that you're not going to find anywhere else, not on Amazon and not in the bookstore. Thank you.
Sean, I'm amused by your question because I'm also in publishing. I work as a science editor, and I'm an award-winning science fiction writer. And my first published story actually touched on some of these issues, although slightly different. I can talk to you about that later offline. Your question, though, was what's the single most important change we're going to have to do for the next 3 to 5 years in the digital revolution? And I think that the answer isn't quite a digital answer, but I think it's going to be making sure that the library continues to get content into people's hands the way they want it. We do have a population that wants still print books and CDs, and we provide those. I think our current materials budget is about 60% print, 40% non-print. But we also have other things. I have on my phone here an app called Overdrive, which is currently how we provide ebooks to people who want them. If you're not familiar with this, any library staff member can direct you to somebody about how to install this in your phone or your Kindle or whatever device you have, if you have one, even your regular computer. And there is a library of books that you can borrow. That said, as have been pointed out before, the selection isn't the best. We actually pay a little more to have a better selection in Brookline, but publishers are very skittish about this sort of thing. There was a problem, I think it was last year or the year before, HarperCollins decided they wanted to limit all library loans of ebooks to 21 checkouts, and then the book would expire, so that libraries would have to buy the book again. And libraries, of course, were rather upset at this. And libraries showed videos of books that had been checked out 50, 100 times in print. They never had to buy another copy. I can see both sides to the issue. I think the main problem is that HarperCollins handled it incorrectly by not actually first consulting the American Library Association and saying we want to talk about this. But, I mean, overall, I don't think print books are going to go away. I think we may in our lifetime see newspapers go away and magazines become marginal. But I think the important thing is really to find out, as we keep moving along, how do the residents of Brookline want to receive their content, their books, their movies, their Broadway show tune albums, and how do we make sure we can provide it to them?
So I think the library is going to face, three major challenges over the coming years. The first is the one we talked about, the digitization of resources. And one thing we're going to need to do is upgrade the Overdrive platform, which is clunky. I think another thing that's been alluded to by the other trustees is we're going to have to change somewhat the perception of the library. You'd be surprised by how many people of my generation, even in Brookline, say, why do we still need a library? And going back to Pooja's point about relevancy. And I think one of the ways we should address that is by getting the library out there. Working on the programming committee, the staff have some great ideas, collaborating with other groups like the Brookline Recreation Group that sponsored mini golf this weekend, collaborating with the Brookline Arts Center, the exhibit that's in the main branch right now, partnerships with merchants, getting out to the farmers market. I think all of these are going to be important to increase the visibility of the library and allow residents to really understand the value it provides as a community center. And then the third major challenge is going to be planning for the future. The library is embarking on its 10-year plan. As has been alluded to, we're going to have to hire, the library is going to have to hire a new head. And I think it would be beneficial to have somebody with experience in these areas. I've worked as an executive in biotech. I've been involved in executive searches. I've helped hire CEOs. I've put together plans and budgets. I've helped raise money and did the scientific talks for bringing in $20 million in our last round of financing. And so I think in order to meet these challenges, we're going to have to really get the library out there and have a discussion with the entire community about what functions we want the library to serve, make sure that the functions we're proposing up here, what you people out there are thinking about, and figuring out the best way to use the resources that we have, understanding that those aren't going to be unlimited, to make this as useful to our community and to give as many people access to things as possible.
Well, how can I improve on that? I just want to reiterate my great passion for books and reading and the town of Brookline, my experience with all of those things. And I would also like to mention that the Library Board of Trustees meets every month. These are open meetings under the open meeting law. And we have set aside a portion at the beginning of each meeting for public comment. So if anyone wants to come and see what the trustees are like, what it's all about, ask a question, you're very much much invited to do that and welcome to do it. Thank you. And thank you, League of Women Voters and Brookline Neighborhood Association, for having this forum for us all to talk with you tonight. And thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you, Margaret, for being our moderator today. It's been a fun job for you, and we enjoyed having you. In closing, I'd like to say that back to the 3 reasons why I'm running, I think access is very important to the library. Not just having different software so that people of different abilities can access materials, but also keeping it open. There are creative ways to keep it open, whether we get volunteers to help staff. That is possible. Other libraries have done it. There's also an issue, then that brings us to the issue of funding. And there are ways to have, like the gala, I think the winter gala was no longer part of us because probably there was more work than it was worth. And there are ways to bring the gala back because it is a community builder and to get more bang for your buck. I'm on the development committee for Steps to Success. And we made little tweaks this year, and we tripled the money we made on the fundraiser. And we actually digitized. We got the cute little square, and everybody paid with credit card, and we raised a lot of money that way. I think relevancy is the number one thing. Sean touched on it before. How do we stay relevant? We are looking at the digital age. We're in it now. Chuck's successor will probably be will have a big voice about this. And what I bring to the table is I do a lot of hiring in my job now. I've been in a hiring position for about the last 5 years. And so I know how to do that particular job when it comes to us. I work well with people. I've actually been endorsed by all of the incumbents, which is unusual, but they all have endorsed me, and I thank them for that. And I hope on April 30th you'll join me in my quest to be on the library board. Thank you.
Hi. I think in addition to the challenges that Magdalene and Judith and Pooja have mentioned, to simplify it, we're really about customer service, and we're in the business to provide an answer to the needs of our patrons, young and old, and of all walks of life. And as Magdalene said, partnerships and collaborations are going to be very important. Expanding programming for whether it's for preschool kids or for seniors. Mention of the gala coming back into the picture in the future, hopefully. But I think our libraries are expanding also, and they're changing of what we use them for. They're becoming more of a community center. They're a place where people can come together and learn and connect and share with each other. And as Pooja mentioned, it's a community builder. And we need to rise up to that challenge of how we're going to do that. For example, one of the things we're talking about is how we're going to bring Coolidge Corner branch up to par, if you will, with Maine and Putterham. Putterham had the most recent renovation, and as you may remember, 2001, 2, 3, Maine was renovated. So Coolidge Corner is long overdue, if you've ever been in there. And that's something that I really look forward to working on. Also, we're going to be hiring a new director at some point when Chuck decides he's, wants to go play golf some more. And I would like to continue the work that I've done. I've started an art exhibit program, and we're about to launch it at Putterham and at Coolidge Corner. I'm very excited about it, and I would love to see it get on its feet and bring the artists and, again, part of a community center idea. And I would really enjoy working with my colleagues, everyone on the board, and I would really like to continue. Thank you.
You know what I love about living in Brookline? It's the quality of the candidates we have running for public office. I like the fact that, for example, I don't think I have to worry about the vote I cast for selectmen. I don't think we're going to have a bad candidate get elected this year. What do you think, Neil? I think a few people have said it before. I think I could speak for all 5 of us here that we want to thank the BNA and the League for hosting this forum and the forum that's going to be hosted tomorrow. And I just want to, I'll conclude by saying that when I first ran for library trustee back in 2004, I was running basically on some promises and suggestions. And one of them, my main issues then were the Sunday hours were one, but also increasing the materials budget that had been kept steady for a few years after the renovation. I basically have fulfilled pretty much every promise I have made as a candidate. Today, running for my 4th term on the board, I now have a record of experience and accomplishment that you guys can check. You can talk to some of my colleagues. Carol Axelrod can tell you how vital she found my help in when we were trying to implement the new circulation system. I would ask you to, if you want to know more about what I've done and what I hope to accomplish, again, I have a website. It's bursteinforbrookline.com, and I also have a Facebook page attached to that, and I do hope you'll all get out on April 30th and vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of our candidates and to those from the audience who joined in the conversation by asking questions. Thank you, and good luck to all the candidates.
Thank you.
We have just a very short interim while these candidates leave the platform.
Do you want us to remove these signs?
Candidates who are running for school committee.
Do you want us to remove the signs? Yeah.
I need to remind our viewers and our audience that the town of Brookline makes very heavy use of its public library, and the public library receives a very small portion of funding within the town budget. So they have a very big job and a very big challenge to provide all the service that they do provide for the amount of money that they actually receive to do that. On a personal note, I would like to make a confession that my own background is very long and strong in the library field, and particularly in public libraries. Several years ago, it was my privilege to lead the groups that wrote the Massachusetts state standards for public library services to children and public library services for young adults, which do appear to be followed pretty well in the Brookline Public Library. In my own career, first as a children's librarian many years ago in New York City, it's interesting to remember that, in light of our questions tonight, it's interesting to remember that in a very large branch in the Bronx, the children's room was not open all of the hours of the public library, and we only served children for 3 hours in the afternoon. It was incredible. There would be lines down the street waiting to come in. It's a much different situation here, where we do have children entering the library all the library hours. And of course, some of the people tonight expressed a wish that we have longer hours. Always a problem for library boards and library directors and library staff. At this point, we would welcome all of those candidates for school committee to please take their seats in the front. And I would remind our audience, our audiences, those of you viewing at home and those of you who are here, that we have 4 candidates who are running for 3 positions on the school committee. And they will follow the same format that we used for the library trustee candidates. They will each begin with an opening statement, and we will then take our questions from the floor in the same format. So we're ready to begin, and Lawrence Oney on the left will be our first speaker.
Greeting. I'm running for school committee because I've lived in the town since '74, and our daughter Rebecca, who I recently learned was advertised in this Bible of the school committee, went to the Lawrence School and Brookline High, and most recently I've served on the Human Relations Commission. had a lot of experience firsthand dealing with kind of the third rail in Brookline, which is race issues. And I have become increasingly disturbed about certain issues regarding the social climate in the Brookline school systems around race. So I've decided to put my white skin in the game, and hopefully we can have some real candid, honest conversations about the social climate in the school. I'm a social architect, I'm a social technologist, and I'm concerned about human deficits, and then also in the question and answer period, I'm more than willing to answer it. There have been 2 critical incidents in Brookline involving educators, which were most disturbing. And finally, I was in a meeting with a couple of the BOS, and they mentioned the METCO program, and that finally tipped me over that I might as well put in my hat in to run for the school committee.
Hi, I'm Helen Charlupsky. I've been on the school committee actually for 21 years now. This is my 8th time running. And I actually would like to start by reading you something that I wrote the first time when I ran for school committee, because it's sort of indicative of why I'm running now again. Overcrowding in the elementary schools, budget cuts, and overdue maintenance, along with stalled contract negotiations and low morale, are the most pressing problems confronting our schools. We need thoughtfully conceived and rigorously implemented long-range plans if we are to solve these problems. It was interesting that this is back, I mean, if you look at the picture, it's back 21 years ago. Problems come around. You know, you have them, you solve some of the problems, and then you come back once more and have some of the similar problems. And I think I have had the experience of being able to help solve that problem. That was a devotion problem at the time. And over the years, I've been very involved with capital projects and with early childhood issues. And those are the areas that I continue to have a significant interest and feel I can contribute quite a bit at this time.
Good evening. Thank you to the League and the BNA for inviting us. My name is Susan Wolf-Ditkoff. I have the honor to serve now as the Vice Chairman of the School Committee. I'm also the co-chair of our Strategic Plan Committee, which looks at the 5-year vision going forward, and the liaison to the Brookline Education Foundation, which is a terrific organization supporting our schools. And I formerly served as our liaison and our representative to the town's OPEB committee, which is other post-employment benefits. And so it got a deep x-ray into the efficiencies needed to address both in our town and our schools. Personally, I've lived in Brookline for over a decade with my husband, who's a town meeting member in Precinct 11. Frighteningly enough, I am in year 3 of 21 as a Brookline parent, so I have many more to go. I'm invested in the long haul. I have a 15-month-old son at home who is a class of something that's terrifyingly high. I come from a family of educators. My stepmother was a high school teacher for 35 years in the Detroit public schools and a union leader, so we can talk about that if anyone wants. And my mother-in-law was a math teacher, so many educators in my family. I wrote my thesis on bilingual education over 20 years ago and was a classroom aide. I also had a long career in the private sector, after which about a decade ago I joined the nonprofit sector, and I work on issues in public education and philanthropy, advising philanthropists particularly interested in the issues facing brown and black children in our nation's cities. And I also serve as the vice president of the Harvard Business School Alumni Board of Directors. So there's lots to talk about in terms of our schools, but that's a quick introduction to who I am, and so thank you for coming tonight and being interested in these questions. It's a terrific sign of our town's strength.
Good evening, I'm David Pollock. I've been a Brookline resident for 29 years. I live on Corey Hill in Precinct 11, and my children went to the Driscoll School. I'm a practicing architect and town planner, a LEED accredited professional with expertise in green building. I work on public projects across Massachusetts, including smart growth planning for cities and towns, low-income housing, accessibility, and other civic projects. I'm a teacher at RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design, with over 15 years of classroom experience there and at Roger Williams University. I have a long history of service to our town and to our schools. I volunteered in the classroom and on the playground when my kids were young. I was on the board of the Brookline Education Foundation from 2001 to 2011, and I've been on the board of the Brookline Music School since 2008. For the last 8 years, I've served on the Brookline Building Commission, overseeing all capital projects for the schools and other town buildings. Today, our schools are overflowing with students, and our operating budgets are straining to keep pace. We need to create capacity at the K through 8s and at the high school. We need to manage expenses, and we need to do it all while maintaining the excellence of our schools and serving the diverse needs of all our students. As a member of the Building Commission, I've been a part of many important responses to these issues. I sat on the School Facilities Master Plan Committee in 2007 through 2009, the first effort to understand and plan for the current enrollment growth. I participated in the renovations of Runkle and Heath and the consideration of modulars at Lawrence and Baker, and I currently serve on the committee for the Devotion School renovation and expansion project. My knowledge of our schools and my experience as an architect and public planner will strengthen the school committee, and my commitment to participatory dialogue will help broaden the conversation and make sure that we find solutions that work for the whole community. I'm a passionate supporter of our schools, a big fan of our town, and I look forward to this next step in my continuing service in Brookline.
Thank you. And do we have questions for this group of candidates from members of the audience?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Dan Saltzman, and I have 3 kids that are all going to go to the schools. I have a first grader now, and I guess what I'm wondering about is the space issue. I know that nobody seems to have the answer, but ultimately the decisions that you people are going to make are going to have a direct impact on me and my family. Where is this going? What are your thoughts on it? I'm not going to hold you to the fire and say, give me your, tell me what the answer is right now, but what are your thoughts? I'd like to hear from all of you about that.
The answer I would give is that, and I've observed this in meetings recently, I am deeply concerned that groups are going to be played off against each other, and there's going to be kind of a divide and conquer impact. And so I believe that the most important thing is that people be straight up and candid about what the real deal is. And so I don't think there are any easy answers to this, but we do really have to have a candid conversation. And obviously there are, some people have belief about, questions about the basis of the data, and there are all those kinds of conversations going on. But my concern is that we be straight up with folks about what's really going on.
I don't know how you want to. Sure. It's a very valid question, what you're asking. I think that we will be, as you know, there's the B-Space Committee that's looking into space and looking at the numbers and attempting to come to some sort of recommendation that will come to the school committee. It'll ultimately be the school committee's decision as to what to go forward with. And I think the decision-making process will be multi-determinate. It will include mostly what's important for children and education of the children. But also the budget of the town has to be considered, and not moving people so much that they feel totally unconnected to their neighborhood. So those are some of the issues that we're grappling with and trying to come to some sort of decision. Along with that, we're also having some mini decisions, so to speak, in the process with the modulars at Lawrence that will enable us to maintain the Lawrence community together right now. We're looking into rentals of spaces that will probably move the pre-Ks out, but will allow us to have more space in the schools. So there's a number of small steps that are being taken for the next year or two, at least, to be able to get us to some of the bigger decisions that we will be making. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So I think we all know the headline, which is that there are lots of kids, no space, and more coming, is the short way to say it. We have something that is appropriately and without hyperbole called an enrollment crisis. We've had 30% growth in our K-8 schools since 2006, and you simply don't get there with the buildings we have and the budget we have. I mean, there's just no talk about straight talk. I mean, it's you can't take absorb that many children. So, I think the good news is it's an exciting testament to our strength as a community that people move here for the schools. I mean, 99 out of 100 people move here for the schools. It's the number one thing people say to us. And at the same time, in all of the discussions about moving children around in boxes and in buildings, one of the things that I think is the most important, because I think we will get there on that, one of the things that I think is most important is making sure that we do it, number one, as a community conversation, number two, with equity for the different groups and for the different schools in town, and there are many different ways to think about equity, and number three, with educational excellence, because I think that there are so many interesting and exciting pedagogical innovations going on in the world right now, and to let this opportunity slip away to kind of get a least bad answer, which is where I hear there's some negativity in the conversation, and I guess I would prefer, and what we're doing on the strategic plan committee is talking about some of the really interesting and exciting things we can do, so that 5 years from now, this is a better system, not one where we've just sort of made do with what we have, but there's some really interesting and exciting innovation. So I think most of the different configurations of kids in boxes can allow for that, and I think it's incumbent upon the school committee members to not only keep budget in mind, which we absolutely have to do, and keep efficiencies in mind and keep cataloging those, but also think about what does educational excellence look like, what does it mean to preserve property values in this town, what does it mean to have a system that everyone's proud of.
So, I'm the facilities guy who said I've been involved in this question for 7 years, and really talking about it with people everywhere in the town for all of that time on almost a daily basis, because it's just a great conversation trying to figure out how to manage this. I mean, and we're still loading on 150 to 200 kids a year with 5 or 6 more years of growth, and so how are we going to put them all in great classrooms? And it's so much about community values. It's really a community discussion. One of the base values of the Brookline schools is small classroom size. And as long as you have a commitment to having the really exceptionally small classroom size that we have in our community, you're going to need more and more and more classrooms. So we have to ask that question about whether we want to hold to that value, because if we want to hold to that value, we have to keep increasing the size of our existing buildings, and we probably need to build another building. The question of the size of the elementary schools. When we hired MGT, the consultant, in 2007 to do that study, one of the things we told them is we didn't want any building to have more sections per grade than 4. That was a community value. That's totally gone now. We've got 6 kindergartens at Devotion. One of our community heroes, Bob Sperber, spoke at the B-Space hearing in this room on Monday night, and he said, we need to build a 9th school. And I think it's a community decision, and I don't want to sort of jump to it. I mean, I'm on the building commission, but not on the school committee. But I think what B-Space is doing and what we all need to do is see how good a site we can find for a 9th school, and then see how good a school we can make on it. And I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you.
John Bassett. Class size has just come up. I want to go back there. A little preface. One of our daughters teaches elementary school in Manhattan, and I believe from her that you can have a productive class that's larger, and you can have a less productive class that's smaller. That class size is one, but maybe not even the most important aspect. So it's a two-part question. Is it within the authority of the school committee to address a policy of class sizes if you decided that you wanted to accept larger classes? Would that be the policy of our schools? And do you have opinions yourselves about class size? Thank you.
I don't know about the authority question, but I do have some insights about class size, okay? Because I've taught in a number of different settings, and ranging from prisons to community colleges to Simmons College to Northeastern University, Boston University, and I actually taught for about 8 weeks in the Boston public school system. For me, the critical factor is the educator in the room. And that's the most significant thing. Frankly, I understand parents generally want small class sizes, but in the real world, it's the educator in the room, and I'm sure each one of us has had experiences where we have not been in ideal physical environments, but the educator has absolutely opened our eyes, and it was a technicolor experience. So the answer to your question is I have mixed view. I'm open to this question of class size, but the educator in the room, that's the secret.
So to answer your question about the authority, we do have the authority in terms of policy. We actually don't have, we don't have a policy regarding class size. What we do have is in the contract that we will attempt to keep classes at 25 or under, and for the lower grades K through 2, 21 or under. That hasn't always happened, obviously. But that's where we are in terms of, what we follow, the precedent that we have, so to speak, but there is no policy. That being said, I feel rather strongly that small classes, especially in this day and age when we're trying to educate and differentiate instruction, are critical for teachers to feel good about how they're teaching and the amount of kids they have to deal with, and to be able to attend to those children. I think that well, from personal experience, I mean, I've had 3 kids go through the schools. My first son never had a class that was, and he's 40, so he's been out of the schools for a while. He never had a class that was over 18, and it was a different experience than my daughter and son, who had larger classes. One class, she had 27 kids in the class, and you couldn't move, and there were 3. There was an assistant teacher and another aide, and you just couldn't move in the class. Beyond the, the issue of teaching, the space didn't accommodate it. For me, I think this is one thing that really sets us as apart from other school systems in terms of our ability to really deliver a first-class education.
Thanks for the question. So as I mentioned earlier, professionally I work on public education issues, and class size is obviously a hot topic because it's the #1 lever in terms of cost to moving a system. The research is pretty clear on this, which is that at the younger grades it matters more than at the older grades. Within a band, it's very, very small, much smaller or much larger than a band actually have significant effects regardless of how good the teacher is. And within a band, the quality of the teacher is more important than the size of the class. So for example, would you rather have a high-quality teacher in a class of 25 or a medium to low-quality teacher in a class of 20? Clearly, you would pick the high-quality teacher in a slightly larger group. But that's only true within a band. You certainly would, a high-quality teacher in a class of 30 versus a low-quality teacher in a class of 15, you're actually better off in a smaller class with a lower quality teacher. So there's actually research on this that in conjoint analysis goes through all of the different variables that says what makes a difference and at what point does class size become more or less important than investing a marginal dollar in a high quality teacher. So we're skipping all that. We can go into it if you want at some point, but at least certainly for our community, this community places a tremendous value on inclusion and inclusion classrooms. So 20 years ago or 30 plus years ago, when many people who are now voters were students, they didn't have inclusion classrooms. They were homogeneous classrooms, and children who were smart were, whatever smart means, were bucketed together, and children with special needs were bucketed together, and there was not a range of learners in a classroom. There was not a range of social emotional needs in the classroom the way that there is now. And so our system, I will say the word breaks if you try to have an inclusion classroom at significantly larger numbers the way that one can do if one had a homogeneous classroom. And I think that's just a diversity that this community values and I value. I will say that there's, the exception to everything I just said is the inclusion of technologies. We can talk about new technology later, but there are models which say instead of 1 to 20, you should be looking at models of 1 teacher to 20 kids. You should be looking at models of 4 teachers to 80 kids, because you can actually do really, really different things if you think about the ratio of adults to students rather than just teacher students. And if you kind of group kids differently. So if anybody's interested in new technologies or new pedagogy, we can get into that, but it does materially speak to the class size question.
Thank you, Susan. This is where humility comes in. I don't have the professional expertise, certainly about all of the education theory that Susan does. I know that from my personal experience with both my children and in my classroom, that class size makes a big difference. I mean, partly what I teach and the way I teach, which is design instruction, is very contact intensive, and I have 13 students, and it can be a challenge for me to really deliver what I need to deliver in a 5-hour class to only 13 students. So I think that it's part of the community conversation, and I think that it's also I would speak briefly about governance and the school committee's responsibilities to work with the superintendent and the administration and the principals and the whole school system in developing policies that work for the whole community, and that it's not a top-down. Things like this aren't at all a top-down order, but really are we work with the superintendent and his office to develop policy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patricia Connors, and I just came from the same meeting that Ms. Shalupski was at, where the people were sitting in shell shock at what's about to occur there. And this is at the Lawrence School, and the parents and the neighbors were listening to a presentation of different possible modular units that will be going into the parking lot behind the Lawrence School. And I have a couple of questions on that. It sounded as if the superintendent had the ultimate authority over which of those options is going to be selected, as I understood it, or is this something that the school committee has authority over? That's number one. And number two was that the modular units that were described are expected to last approximately 30 years because they're made out of steel and concrete. And of course, the people in the room are concerned that these modular units going to be staying there for 30 years, and what's to become of them. And there wasn't really a clear answer to that. So I'd like to hear from the candidates as to how they feel about the disposition of these steel and concrete modular units.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Helen, but my understanding is that the school committee has tremendous authority, and the big decision they make is who they hire for superintendent. So my instinct would be that at the end of the day, it's about the school committee. They lend their authority to the superintendent. And so, but in terms of I have heard briefly from some folks this concern about the modular situation. I have no expertise in that area.
Well, I guess I can answer some of this question since I have quite a bit of expertise with building projects. It is the school committee that makes the final decision because we have to vote the funds, we have to sign the contracts. That being said, we work in conjunction with our administration and with the community. So the buck stops with us. You've elected us to do that. But the process to get there will be a much more inclusive process. That being said, it's not going to be the same as the Lawrence School process was that, took a year till we designed it and then another couple of years till it actually got finished. Here it'll be a much more shortened process because it's 4 classrooms. We're not talking about a full building. We are talking about issues for the neighborhood, no doubt about that, and I heard that loud and clear tonight as you did too. And it's the first time actually that the neighborhood has had a chance to talk with the architect, and the architect certainly was listening and will be taking some of all the issues into account and trying to address them. So that the first part I think is pretty clear as to who will finally decide. The getting there is more of an inclusive one. The second part, we've had modulars in other buildings. We had 25 years, we had the Heath School modulars that were put onto the end of the building, and then eventually we took them down and built, regular classrooms. That's possibly what will happen here. There's no way to know 30 years out, will we have the same population? Will our population go down by then? I mean, that's a really difficult one to imagine at this point. I think any of our buildings after 30 to 40 years need renovation, need updating, so that, it's for the money that we would be spending on these 4 classrooms, we would certainly get the value out of it over the 30 years.
So one of the very hot topics in town. So on governance, just to echo Helen, I mean, the superintendent fundamentally reports to the school committee reports to the community, so at the end of the day, the buck stops with us, as Helen said. And at the same time, that leads to the fact that one needs to, as a school committee member or as a selectman for that matter, any of these townwide offices, you need to balance an inclusive process with the community with leadership. Because things that are or are not popular with one particular group of parents at one particular point in time may or may not be in the long-term best interests of the system. So we need to hear from the community, we need to be in dialogue with the community, we need to also make judgments based on what is in the best pedagogical interest, what's in the best capital interest, long-term, as opposed to simply a short-term answer. So that's an incredibly difficult needle to thread, and we thread it on many issues, and the Lawrence modulars are one of those many issues where we thread that needle. I will say that, in terms of the humility that David mentioned, I have absolutely no opinion on steel versus concrete versus trailers for that matter. I went to school in trailers and I turned out fine, but that's a data point of one, and it's hardly a good way to make decisions. So I guess what I would say is that what's clear is that, to me anyway, that the facilities have to be, temporary facilities have to be adequate enough to get the job done in a temporary way. Permanent facilities have to be in sync with the long-term vision, and we do have the luxury and deficit of having to think in a multi-decade type way, a system-wide way about these issues. And so there are certainly things that are going to be unpopular for some small period of time, and that is part of the unfortunate job that we have.
So you're right that when one does a project like this, in some sense, what one is doing is installing permanent temporary buildings, semi-permanent, whatever. They're not going to go away in 3 years. The building commission met on the 4th floor last night, as we do every month, and as we do every month, talked about the modulars. And we've been talking about modulars for years and years and years on the building commission. We've talked about them at Baker, not just now, but 5 years ago. We talked about them at Lincoln. We talked about them at Runkle before we decided to renovate Runkle. We talked about them at Heath. And what the building commission said to the schools about Heath was, let's do a permanent building. We really don't want, and we looked at the numbers and it was the same cost. And we did a permanent building at Heath, and everybody's really happy about it. And the issue today at Lawrence is that we do not have the luxury of time. We really don't have the time. It would be challenging to, we decided last night that there really would be no way to do a permanent, in no way at all that we could get classrooms at Lawrence in a permanent building for the fall of 2014. So the soonest would be 2015, and there's just no opportunity there. That having been said, and you've seen more advanced work from the architect than I've seen, because they didn't present anything to the building commission last night. They presented really quick preliminary stuff 4 weeks ago. And what I told them was that what we wanted was design excellence. And even though the foundation is concrete and the frame of these buildings is steel, what they were presenting was a brick-clad building that would potentially match Lawrence. And I think that one of the things about the 4 versus 3 is that the 3 takes up more parking spaces because it's single-story, and I think the 4 up against the gymnasium on a smaller footprint is probably better for the schools and better for the community. But that's all needs to be discussed.
So when you say permanent, temporary, you don't have any qualms about it being there for 30 years then?
It's there to serve a need, a crisis need, and I think that that we would want to restore the parking and restore the building as soon as it was practicable. And when that can be, we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Are we allowed to say one more thing? Or not? Pardon? Are we allowed to say one other thing? Or?
That's up to the moderator.
Or just to clarify. Well, that's all right.
Arthur Conquest, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6. About a month ago, might have been 3 weeks ago, someone put an article, a Boston Globe article, in my mailbox at home, and it talked about a discussion that took place amongst the school committee, and I think it might have been the Board of Selectmen, about the Medco program. And someone at that meeting talking about the fact that Medco students or Medco parents weren't really residents of this community, and that they didn't vote here, so therefore they weren't really considered to be part of the school system. It was something along those lines. I read it very quickly, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the Medco program, whether or not you think it pays for itself, whether you think there are any real justifications for thinking about keeping the program here for, in the immediate future, et cetera, et cetera. Make sense?
Yeah.
Well, on the Human Relations Commission, twice we have brought the superintendent in talking about equity issues in the high school. And I've asked him twice publicly, what are the benefits of the METCO program for the white students? And he didn't have an answer. And my feeling is this, that we really, when we're looking at METCO, the METCO program, we really need to look at what are the benefits for the white students, for the white faculty, for the Brookline community, as well as the black students. And I was very disturbed when there was this space issue that right out of the box, whether it was just a trial balloon or whether it was just a loose conversation, and it was kind of interesting to me that right out of the box it was METCO. And the impact that that has, and I know this from talking with folks, the impact that this has, it's very painful for people in the METCO community when that conversation goes on. Now, I'm aware the superintendent issued a statement where he's got the word commitment in it. But my experience in race relations is that if you don't feel it, you don't know it. And so this is not about words, this is about actions. So that's my response.
Well, I think I'll start with your first question of what do I think about the METCO program. And Brookline has been proud to be a member of the METCO community from its inception, actually. We have the second largest number of METCO students in the program, and we benefit a great deal by that, as much as the METCO students also benefit. I think that it provides diversity in our town. It provides, for those students of color who live in Brookline, some more peers to interact with. The numbers are just greater. And I think it, over the years, I've seen, and I know you've been involved with this too from way back when, that Brookline has been much more committed to closing the achievement gap, making sure that we have programs that will help to do that. So I'm committed to keeping it, and the other program that was also mentioned at the same time as the METCO program was the staff children. The children of staff in Brookline, teachers and town staff, are allowed to go to the Brookline Public Schools for a materials fee. And I think that that also is very critical for us in maintaining excellent staff and having them stay here for a long time while their students are, and their children are in the schools. I think, I guess that's basically how I would answer the question.
Thank you, Arthur. We've certainly had many conversations about this over the years since we ran together for school committee in 2008. I think that personally, METCO, just to go through your questions, it is true that METCO parents are not residents by definition. It is true they don't vote here by definition. The program doesn't pay for itself or even close to that. I think the piece I would dispute is that they're not considered part of the school system or the school community. That's certainly not been my experience, at least in the Driscoll School, and I don't think that's the experience of many people. I think in nearly every community that I'm aware of, school community that I'm aware of, that the METCO parents are considered absolutely part of the school community, regardless of whether or not the program pays for itself financially. Those are two completely separate questions in my mind. So are there real justifications for keeping it here? Absolutely. Helen mentioned some of them, but not only are we living in an increasingly global and diverse community, and we have a fair amount of diversity among residents in terms of language and national origin. I think we have something like between 40 and 50 home languages are spoken among families at the high school, so it's extraordinarily diverse in terms of our residents. Our diversity in terms of Black and Hispanic Hispanic children is not as representative as some of the other diversities that we have. So, which is why the school committee is almost, I mean, to a person, I'm not sure there were any real doubts on the school committee about keeping Medco, although I will say that fiscally, we had to look at it the way we look at everything, but I don't think that from a values point of view, I've ever heard a school committee member say we should get rid of Medco. I will say that we have heard those questions from the community. There are community members who have asked us in a serious way whether or not we should be valuing the Metco program, not just for financial reasons, but in general. And so we as school committee members, and I think every one of us can tell you stories of people and the conversations that we've had about this, because I don't think the community is unanimous, although I think it is highly supportive. The last thing I will say is that, just to show as action speaking louder than words, I mean, we do have representation. Our Metco coordinator, Susie Talukdar, is on our strategic plan committee as a representative, precisely because the future of the program is important to us as we think about our 3 to 5 year goal. And the superintendent advocated to put her on the committee. I advocated to put her on the committee. Our deputy superintendent for teaching and learning. So at least in my mind, and as we think about the strategic plan going forward, Susie is absolutely a full voice at the table and a very active participant on our quite diverse group of parents and teachers and school leaders thinking about the 5-year strategic plan.
So I think of myself as generally quite open-minded, and I don't come to the school committee with much preconception or things, strong, firm decisions, preconceived decisions and beliefs and things. But my unqualified support of Metco in Brookline is something that I come to the school committee absolutely with. And I can just speak from my own personal experience. From the time my oldest child, who's now 23, started kindergarten at the Driscoll School, my wife and I and our children were Metco host family, and continue to be all the way through the school. And the richness of experience that Metco brought to our family and to our children's experience and to our school and to our community, I think is invaluable, and I'm completely in support of it.
Thank you very much.
I'm Sean Lynn Jones, town meeting member from Precinct 1 and a member of the advisory committee. I was here the other night for the public hearing on how to deal with the increasing enrollment and the shortage of space in the public schools of Brookline. And I think the speech that received the most applause was by former Superintendent Sperber. And he said a lot of things, but the thing that really stood out for me was his case for the current model of a K-8 and then 9 to 12 school system in Brookline. And I never really thought about it, and he had some very good arguments for why that was the best possible educational division in terms of the ages and the grades. So my question to you is, do you think that the K-8 system with the 9 to 12 high school is worth preserving? Is it really that much better? Is it something that we should be willing to sacrifice a lot for, such as putting up with modulars or investing very heavily in new construction? Or, are there some other trade-offs that would lead you to favor a different model than the long-established K-8, 9 to 12?
Well, I was at that meeting, and I am a fan of Bob Sperber, and in terms of being an educator, and really understanding education, I think he's just top of the top. So when he made that pitch for K through 8, he sold me. He knows his stuff. So I would follow Bob Sperber's advice about be bold and not safe.
I think that I personally feel that a K through 8 system is an exceptional way of teaching students mostly because of their development and what happens when they get to the middle grades. Maybe not so much educationally, because one could make an argument for junior high school or middle school being able to more individualize and have kids do more advanced things. The classes begin to get very small when you get to the 7th and 8th grade. However, I feel that it's really, it's a great system. I've seen it with all three of my kids. I've seen that it's worked very well. On the other hand, I also need to be practical, and I think we need to weigh all the possibilities of what's feasible and what the town can afford. I mean, I think we have both those things. Whatever happens, we will give an excellent education, whether it's, pre-K to 8, whether it's K through 8, or K through 7, 8 and 9, whatever, model that we end up giving, that part I can be sure of, that the children will get a great education. One thing that I would like to do is minimize the amount of transitions that children make, if that's feasible. And that's why the K through 8 also works so well, because you don't have kids moving every couple of years. So my answer is, I think that unfortunately the jury's still out as to what we will end up doing. All things being equal, I would have K through 8, but I think I need to look at all the aspects and then make a decision.
So thanks for the question. I mean, certainly the K system is a very good system. There's a lot of research behind it, especially more on the social emotional side and the development side than on the academic side, in the sense that by delaying, if you have middle schools as these sort of seething cauldrons of raging hormones, as they are otherwise known, it does increase risk behaviors. It increases a bunch of negative social outcomes. I will say, though, that the most significant downside to this, and there are a fair number of parents in this town who are concerned about rigor in the system, that the rigor and the opportunities available in a dispersed K-8 model are less for grades 6 through 8. The academic opportunities are less, the sports opportunities are fewer. I mean, there are a number of downsides to a K-8 model. So do I think it's the only system? No. Do I think it's a great system? Yes. You had asked about, should it be, everything else be sacrificed to it? My answer is no. I think that I moved here for the K-8 system, like many other people, but it is certainly not the only system, and there are other ways, as Helen said, to offer terrific educational experiences. One of the things that is under discussion is, are there concept schools should we think that we should be thinking about? Should we be thinking about a science and technology concept school for some grade span that did really different and interesting things for certain, in the science and technology, engineering, and mathematics realm? I mean, that's something that you can't really do in this current system. So I do think that most of the conversation has focused on, again, sort of kids in boxes and where in town they're going to be, but I do think that there are a lot of really exciting educational opportunities regardless of the format that we choose, based on budget and facilities and time frame, which is a huge one, and some of the other drivers that we're considering. So I guess for me, it's keeping that piece of the conversation front and center.
So I think the K through 8 system is a great system, and it's one that the community has spoken to. I mean, it's really it's sort of a signature of the Brookline schools, and I think while there is what I've heard, some people questioning, and there's a lot of really interesting discussion about other models. Predominantly, it's really embraced by our community and is part of our identity and part of our success. I think that there is a lot of awareness of the academic opportunity, the limitations for the oldest middle school kids, where they are still pretty much, they just sort of have science, they have art, and whereas if you put them together, there could be more class selection and a lot more opportunities. I agree exactly with what Susan said, which is that we need to really have the research and the discussion, and really led by our superintendent on what the opportunities are. And I do think that I mean, I don't think another model solves our space problem, because that relates to just census and numbers, and you still need the classrooms. However you organize them, we're still going to be short 30 or 50 classrooms, or we could grow by 80 more classrooms, including at the high school, by the time we're done, if everything just keeps on the track. So you still have to build somewhere. And I think that just what Susan said, that we have to have the discussion about pedagogy and philosophy and keep that vibrant, because even we can't be overwhelmed by the crisis mentality in terms of making the best choices about our educational system.
Hi, Kaya Vanderzeel, town meeting member from Precinct 15. I had, 4 of our children graduated from Brookline schools. So I've had experience with a kid who was at Old Lincoln for 9th grade, and I don't really want to get into that. But one thing I did appreciate about Brookline, one of the reasons I moved here, was because of programs like the METCO program. I appreciate that diversity in the student body, and I certainly am appreciative that you appreciate it as well. However, I find it a bit troublesome that it flies in the face of who actually is employed in the school system, especially in the administrative level. It is very good for children to go to school with a diverse student population, but it is also very good for them to see a diverse array of teachers and administrators within their schools, as it is good for the rest of the community. And I wonder if you have any comments on that or any feelings about how to come to a more equitable distribution of jobs within the town. And part of this is of course fueled by this recent articles before town meeting 9 and 10 that actually deal with some of that, and also the fact that in the administration of the town in general, it's not just the school committee, there are no people of color in the higher administrative levels, and I find that troubling. It's not a good example for our children.
So, I'm not a believer in political correctness or photo diversity. However, you're raising one of the reasons why, an important issue, one of the reasons finally why I decided to enter this race is because there was a significant critical incident regarding a black dean at Brookline High. And I found it most disturbing that two things. One is that the taxpayers in Brookline probably, probably will, the freight on keeping that silent will be about $150,000 to $175,000. And that was a secret settlement. And at the same time, I'm sitting in a room where people are concerned about money for other programs, and I'm thinking, why the secret settlement? But more importantly, that it was disturbing that, frankly, that there wasn't a candid conversation about race that was discussed publicly. And at the end of the day, I think that may be a symptom of some larger problems. So, in any case, I think that we know the school committee lends its authority to the superintendent, and at the end of the day, we need to be very clear with the superintendent about our community value system.
Thank you for your question. I think that the school committee has the policy that we definitely do not, we are an equal opportunity employer. We certainly look for minority candidates, and not just black, but Asian and also Russian, to mimic our population and allow children to have role models. That being said, certainly we could do more. However, in the last 2 years, we've had the head of our human resources department is a black educator who had been the head of K through 8 math before that. I know that we've done over the years many what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry, blocking. We've searched many places. We've gone to colleges in the South, to historically black colleges, to find teachers. And the teachers that, when we do have teachers of color, they usually do stay with us for quite a while, which is a good thing. I mean, that can also be a problem to not just hire, but maintain people. Your question about the town, the school committee isn't in charge of the town and can't really influence the town in terms of how they hire or don't hire. But for us, it certainly is a value for us, and is something that we speak about, that we certainly, the superintendent certainly is aware of that and concerned about that. So we, at different levels, do as much as we can. We go to minority hiring fairs. We attempt to recruit people and try to recruit, students from colleges to come as student teachers, because oftentimes that's how teachers remain in the system. So are we perfect at it? No. Could we do better? Yes. Are we trying? Yes.
So thank you for the question. Certainly minority hiring is an important discussion, and we have it at the school committee regularly. I will also say that as part of the strategic plan conversation, we have a value around educational equity. We also have a goal around educational equity, and one of the themes underneath that is structural barriers, meaning what's something that's not just an incident of difference in performance, but actually something that's structural, something like scheduling, something like leadership and role models, a variety of different structural barriers to educational equity. And so hiring is certainly one of them. There was an article in the Globe about maybe 3-4 months ago that looked at this question and sort of named it as an issue, not only in the suburban communities, but in Boston as well. It's a significant issue. There's a group called BEAM, which is a group of black educators who are focused on this issue specifically in dialogue with Carol Johnson in Boston. There's a set of groups in the suburban communities who are looking at this. And the good news, which isn't particularly good, but it's at least not as bad as it could be, is that statewide we are pretty comparable in terms of minority groups. So we're 64% white last I checked, and that's more or less comparable with the statewide average. And in terms of teaching staff, the statewide average is about 7% minority, compared to 33% is not terrific. We are at 10%, so we are beating the statewide average. Not nearly representative, but that is an issue that a group of educators in this entire area of Massachusetts have identified as a priority. And there are only a handful of districts that are over 10%. So if you look at Lexington, it's at 7%. I'm looking at the numbers now. Waltham's at 3%. Anyway, so we're doing well compared to the comparators, although no one's actually solving the problem. The last thing I'll say is that this question is, there are many solutions to it about going to more hiring fairs or whatnot. One of the other things that we've done is become something with a few other districts. We're engaged in something called Today's Students, Tomorrow's Teachers, which is a program that we are investing in. It's a grow your own type program with a few others where there is a group of high school students who commit to the program and then have the intention of becoming educators later on. So we are investing in this program. The high school students shadow teachers, they participate in summer internships, they attend college and SAT prep classes, they can qualify for scholarships to certain colleges, and when they graduate from college, the expectation is that they will come back and teach in their former school district. So we have one, and I think we're doing our second cohort of TSTT students right now, and so it's a grow your own, mentor your own type approach, which we're excited about and we hope to expand. Even in difficult budget times, this is something that we are investing in. So it's a complicated answer, and it's not done by any stretch, but certainly the conversation's happening, and there are tangible, concrete investments that I support and that the school committee is supporting.
So diversity in our community and diversity in our leadership is a core value, and you know, sort of vital to the health of our community, and it's something that needs to be an active conversation and pursued vigorously. I can just say personally, as an employer and a business owner, it's a deep concern for me in my architecture practice, and something that we work on. And just last night at the close of the building commission meeting, I spoke to my fellow building commissioners, and on the subject of finding an architect to replace me on the building commission, and my hopes that we could find a woman and or minority to join the building commission. The chair of the commission is a woman, but the rest of us are white guys, and we need more diversity at all levels, and boards and commissions, and in our school faculty, and in our community.
Thank you. And now for final thoughts from the candidates for school committee.
I asked for your vote because I think that we are in a situation now in Brookline where we have a major community development effort that needs to take place. And in my professional life over 35, 40 years, I have done all kinds of work in community development, and I think that I could be of value when we have all these conversations with all these various groups. The other thing I want to say is I'm a guy that gets under the hood, and I believe that at the end of the day, that school system exists for students. And for 4 years, I ran a dialogue group, 3 hours a week, outside of the school building, where there were Metco students, there were students from all parts of Brookline. And I can tell you, based upon that conversation and and other conversations I've had, that we do have a situation in Brookline where Metco students, okay, do not feel like they're first-class citizens in the Brookline school system. So we had some very, very painful conversations. So my expertise is going right to the grassroots, and I hope that people will give me the equal opportunity to succeed in this race.
I want to thank the League for sponsoring this debate and having us here tonight. I would also like to ask for your vote for the school committee. I think that there are many issues that are challenging our community right now, issues that I've had experience with and that I can help to formulate some answers to together with the community. I'm not a one-issue person. I think that there are many issues that one needs to deal with in the schools, including the budget, the overcrowding, technology. These are really topics that all of us need to worry about. And I think that with my experience and being a social worker and having those traits and skills can help to forge a lot of consensus that we need to have in terms of moving forward in these difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to serve the community for the last number of years. on the school committee. And this year, as co-chair of the strategic plan committee, we've addressed many of the issues that we've addressed tonight. And I've been really impressed by the commitment of our teachers, of our parents, of our community, to keeping our sights set on moving forward, even as we do face these very difficult budget times. We haven't talked a lot about efficiencies, but we have spent a lot of time with sharp pencils this year, making difficult decisions, and as we have in previous years, but especially this year and going forward. And so I do think that it's a balance of the cost and the quality, because I think this is a community that really values its education. We hear about it every night. So today is the 10th, and as of tomorrow, we will have had 13 school-related meetings in the last 10 days, which is just an extraordinary number of meetings. So this community cares passionately, and I love it. And frankly, if you don't want to sign up for it, don't run. But I guess my point is that questions around rigor and high expectations for every student, questions about every student being a Brookline student. I mean, we don't look at kids as these are the Metco kids and these are the Brookline kids. They are all Brookline kids. They are all Brookline parents. In my child's class, a Metco parent happened to be a room parent, but I can't think of a single person who said, that's a Metco parent. The answer was, that's our room parent. And that's something that I value about this community, and I really do believe that the parent perspective and the strategic perspective and the community perspective, all these things have to be brought into the same frame and into the same discussion. And it's time-consuming and complicated, but worthwhile and really important. And so I've been honored to serve. I would love your support to serve again. And thank you for coming out and staying here late and watching, if you're watching, because I think that is what makes this community really special.
Well, I want to thank the League also for all the service they do in the community and for hosting us. I mean, I feel right at home. I grew up in a League of Women Voters household, and both of my grandmothers served. Although my mother says that there was an active argument at home when I was a child whether I was right and it was the League of Lemon Voters, or my sister was right and it was the illegal women voters. In my 8 years of service on the Building Commission, our most constant customer is Helen and the Brookline Public Schools, month in and year in and out. And as Helen will attest, very often those conversations, the Building Commission executes the will of town meeting and spends the town's funds wisely to build capital projects and hire architects and engineers and contractors and make sure that things are built right. And it doesn't get involved in policy. And as I think Helen would support, a lot of those conversations in the Building Commission have as a kind of a through line, we could have done this a lot more efficiently and a lot better if you'd been here sooner. And I think that I would ask for your vote to put me on the Building Commission, because we are looking at an school committee. Yes, to take me off the Building Commission. Because we're looking at spending an enormous amount of wealth, and we want to do it even more wisely. And in order to do that, we need to have an architect and town planner with my depth of experience in the conversation on the level of policy and philosophy, and not just at the level of execution.
On behalf of the Brookline Neighborhood Alliance and the Brookline League of Women Voters, a very big thanks to, a very big thank you to all of our candidates and to the members of the audience who gave us so many good questions to put the discussion on a wonderful basis tonight. We began the evening by asking if there were members of the audience who were candidates for town meeting who wished to introduce themselves. And we would like to end by asking, are there any other members of the audience who have come in since who are candidates for town meeting? If so, would you stand and please introduce yourselves? Speak up.
My name is Patricia Connors, and I'm up for re-election in Precinct 3.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Joanna Baker. I've been representing Precinct 13 for town meeting for 1 year, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to serve for 3 more.
And we hope everyone will join with us in encouraging all of our neighbors and friends to come out and vote on April 30th. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.